I'm Nancy Cordes at the United Center in Chicago. Welcome to a special Democratic National Convention edition of America Decides. It's night 3 here in Chicago. We've already heard some sound checks this afternoon from big-name performers like Maren Morris, John Legend, and a short time ago, Stevie Wonder. They're preparing to bring down the House tonight. It's also Tim Walz's big night. The Minnesota governor also did a walkthrough earlier today ahead of his keynote address tonight, where he will formally accept the Democratic Party's vice presidential nomination. Big night for him. Also speaking this evening, former President Bill Clinton. He's going to be delivering his 12th consecutive convention address. He's been doing this for 44 years, believe it or not. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg will also speak, and we're going to hear from former Speaker Nancy Pelosi as well. Those speeches come on the heels of former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama, the pair making their case for Kamala Harris last night, rallying voters with back-to-back stem winders. Take a listen.
Now it is up to all of us to fight for the America we believe in. And make no mistake, it will be a fight.
Consider this to be your official ask. Michelle Obama is asking you, no, I'm telling y'all to do something.
Do something. And what are they going to do tonight? Well, for that, I'm going to go now to Weijia Jiang and Ed O'Keefe. Ed is on the floor. Weijia's here with me. It is a White House unit reunion. It is great to be together with the two of you. So, Ed, I'm going to start with you down there on the floor because you experienced all that energy firsthand. It was off the charts when the Obamas spoke. What was that like? And tell us more about how Democrats are planning on following that up tonight.
Yeah, it was the First Lady's night. I didn't think more than former President Obama, in that she so forcefully laid it all on the line, even that explicit, this is Michelle Obama asking you to do something. This is one of the most admired, famous women in the world, knew full well that by re-engaging in partisan politics, she was inviting criticism, scrutiny, attacks on her, and she warned her party that they're coming in a way that I think, many of them knew in this hall and perhaps needed to be reminded. Also, that talk at the beginning about the mood, that feeling in your gut that it's been a tough several years. You may not have hope anymore, but that something may be happening here. A nod to her husband's legacy, that movement that he began in 2008, but also capturing a moment in the American psyche that, yes, perhaps something is happening with the Harris campaign now underway, this snap election in November. And, already you're hearing talk that because of that ability to capture the mood, the way maybe Mario Cuomo did in 1984, or her husband did 20 years ago this summer, it could ultimately rank as one of the most memorable, effective convention speeches ever given. If you thought Lil Jon was a lot last night, as you were alluding to, Nancy, it seems the Democratic Party has a few more up their sleeve tonight. We heard sound checks earlier today for Stevie Wonder. We know that John Legend is being joined by Sheila E. for a tribute to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Those are, reminders that this party in so many different ways is trying to make connections with voters, in this case, culturally. If it isn't Tim Walz on stage or Bill Clinton tonight that draws you in, maybe it's a clip of Stevie Wonder performing tomorrow morning in your Instagram feed, or the sight of John Legend here on stage that makes a younger voter think twice about this election. Whatever it takes, it seems the Democratic Party is pulling out all the stops to make it happen.
Speaking of Little John, Ed, it appears, and I don't know if you got a monitor down there and you can see this, but it looks like you photobombed him last night during his big moment. You were just a few feet away from one of the men of the evening right there. What was that like?
It was, we're standing here at center court of the United Center, and Lil Jon just, strolls out the way he did. And you think to yourself, all those years of studying journalism and political science and covering campaigns, and it comes down to moments like that. Definitely a highlight. And look, the reality is you get packed in down here. We were over watching New York throw its delegates at Harris, and Spike Lee was standing there with them, handed me his phone, and said, could you take a few pictures? I said, well, look, if the movie director is telling me to take pictures for him, I will oblige. Kind of cross the Rubicon there a little bit, but it's Spike Lee. It's that kind of night. It's that kind of place. And there's going to be more of it tonight and tomorrow. look, there is a element of Hollywood and the music industry that favors Democrats and is willing to do what they can to help. And the Democrats said, come to Chicago.
Who knows who you could run into tonight? You had an opportunity last night to get sort of a preview of what Tim Walz, who's delivering the keynote speech tonight, might say. Let's take a listen to a little bit of what he had to say last night and then talk about what we'll hear tonight.
You run a campaign based on fear like them, you're going to run into a little trouble when you run into a campaign that's based on joy.
He's been talking about joy a lot. Is that what we're going to hear tonight?
He's been talking about joy since the moment he was really introduced as her running mate. And it's not just him talking about it. Anytime that the campaign has put forth anybody who has known Governor Walz from his past to his present, they talk about the fact that he is a jolly guy and that he has big girl dad energy and that he is just happy-go-lucky, which is built into his personality. And it's also now become part of the campaign strategy to draw a contrast between them and the Republicans. And so I think we'll hear a lot more of that. And we heard yesterday from the second gentleman as well, who portrayed his wife as a joyful warrior. And I expect that will be the case too, Nancy, because it's not enough that he is a happy guy, right? He has to show that he can transfer that personality into real action and make deals and make changes for Americans. And tonight's theme is a fight for our freedoms. We've already heard Governor Walz talk about his very personal story about he and his wife having to use fertility treatments to conceive their children. And I do expect him to go deeper into that tonight as well. And before we move on, I have to say, because I wouldn't be doing my part on this reporting team if I didn't just say Nancy and Ed, it's actually Lil
John.
Lil
I
John.
realized that as soon as I said it, that I stuck the T's in there.
It's okay.
It's Lil John.
But
that was very unbrat of me.
Big Walz tonight.
Yep.
Big waltz for Walz.
Big Walz.
It's his big dance. So really it's his chance to introduce himself to America in a new way.
And Ed, he's going to be introduced tonight by one of his former students. Actually, one of his former 7th graders. He was his basketball coach and his track coach. And you had a chance to speak with a former high school student of Walz's as well. What did he have to say?
So there's going to be, I think, about 14 of them on stage at some point tonight. Football players, students who know him from Mankato. We spoke with John, who was a defensive tight end on the team, about Mr. Walz earlier today and what he's expecting you might hear tonight. Did you ever think you'd be in Chicago to see your old high school football coach get nominated as Vice President of the United States?
You know, came a certain point when you saw the opportunity and you know, as he was a football coach and then moved into politics, you saw that the way he was able to communicate translates well.
What do you think is maybe the biggest misconception about him?
Well, I don't know. You know, you've seen a lot of people throw things at the wall, and I don't think anything's really sticking.
Nancy, you're also probably going to see a few of these tonight from the Minnesota delegation. They brought their red flannels for tonight's big speech. This is Bernie.
Bernie, yes.
What part of the state are you from?
I live in New Brighton, Minnesota. I'm originally from Duluth.
And what do you make of your governor getting picked and having this big night?
This is a big night, and we are very excited and very proud. I can't tell you what it means for me to be here. I actually get to work with the governor on a pretty regular basis. I'm the president of the Minnesota AFL-CIO.
Oh, yeah,
and,
yeah, you do.
So that's a big deal. And just to be here and be with the Minnesota delegation, it's been an amazing, I mean, just the lead up, right? I mean, first we knew that Vice President Harris was going to be the candidate, and then everybody was sitting on pins and needles, and we certainly shared a number of pictures with our governor on Facebook, a lot of us, and so that was a lot of fun. But to be here tonight, and knowing that he's going to speak, I can't tell you how proud I am, and just there will be some tears, I'm sure. It's going to be an emotional evening, but we're just in a great mood and ready for this to happen.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
It's going to go great.
All right. Thank you, Bernie, for saying hi. Nancy, they're going to stick out real fast, so we figured we'd give you a taste of it. But back up to you.
Thanks so much, Ed. Yeah, one of the most memorable moments of Barack Obama's speech last night was when he said that Tim Walz has a lot of flannels in his closet that look like they've been through some things. Ed O'Keefe on the floor, Weijia Jiang here with me. Thanks so much. We'll be talking to you again a little bit later in the night. Well, while the Democratic National Convention continues here in Chicago, former President Trump campaigned in North Carolina today. What he had to say during his first outdoor rally since last month's assassination attempt. You're streaming America Decides. We'll be right back.
Now that we have changed the world, it's time to change America.
Welcome back to night 3 of the Democratic National Convention. Democratic Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii joins me now. Senator Schatz, it's so good to see you. You said something really interesting the other day. You said winning and losing feels the same until the end. We're 1 month into the Harris nomination. Can you tell whether you're winning or losing?
It sure feels like winning today. This is a good week. I've been to now 4 conventions. This feels a lot like 08 in Denver with Barack Obama. I think one of the differences is that, you know, when it was Obama, it was almost this messianic fervor about his individual talent and leadership. This feels more like a team effort. This feels like, you know, a friend of mine used to say, a movement is faith in strangers. And I feel like from all across the country, we're starting to have faith in strangers again. So we feel good. We're having fun. We have a long way to go, but I'd rather be us than them.
It can sometimes be hard at these conventions to tell whether all of the excitement in the arena is translating out in the country, is translating in states like yours, in Hawaii, which is overwhelmingly Democratic. Can you get a sense at this early point about whether there's more excitement about Harris than there was about Biden, and whether that's going to translate into action?
I think there's a couple of things. First, you know, we watched the polling and it's been improving. But also the feeling is incredible. We've had a couple of tough conventions where there were real fault lines in the Democratic Party. And it's not like we all agree on everything now, but I think we all agree on the main thing, which is that we've got 77 more days to fight for freedom. And I also think that launching from this position gives us, I think, we just feel like we're on a rocket ship right now. Lots of bad things can happen in the next 77 days, and we have to brace ourselves for that. But I would certainly rather be the campaign with momentum.
Speaking of fault lines, one of the major fault lines right now, not only within the party, but in the country, is Israel and the war in the Middle East. And you were one of the first senators to come out in favor of conditioning military aid. There are no, as far as we know, Palestinian speakers on the docket over the next 4 days. Do you think that that's a mistake, given the way so many young people in particular feel about this war?
Listen, I think this is a tough one, but there is an opportunity here with the vice president to kind of reset not just the politics of this, which is what we're talking about tonight, but the foreign policy direction of the United States. We've got to start thinking about what happens the day after this war. We've got to fight for a two-state solution. And Kamala Harris is going to be a loyal vice president. There's only one commander-in-chief at a time, but I think people are correct in intuiting that she is going to chart her own path forward. She does not have a 30 or 40-year relationship with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. And I think there's an opportunity to turn the page here.
You and one of your good friends in the Senate, Chris Murphy of Connecticut, have been doing these videos that you're posting on social media where you talk about various issues, looking to, you know, convey your positions to the party and also explain to particularly younger voters where Kamala Harris stands. Let's take a listen to a clip and then we'll talk about it.
J.D. Vance actually said that people with children should be assigned more votes than people without children, and that if you have a kid, you get like an extra vote, but then you get to control that vote until they turn 18. It's weird, and it's I don't know what to say. It's just bananas.
So where did the idea for these videos come from? What are you trying to accomplish?
Well, we were texting each other about how we could kind of elevate, I think, some of J.D. Vance in particular, you know, he's got weird ideas.
He's your Senate colleague.
He's my Senate colleague, and we've had pleasant interactions on a human level, but that's got nothing to do with this. I'm not calling him personally weird. I think it is actually a weird idea to say that if you have children, you get more votes than if you don't have children. And that's not the only weird idea he's got. And I think one of the reasons that I think the Republican Party is having difficulty connecting with the mainstream is that JD is kind of in an internet bubble of people who agree with him all the time. And it's kind of the first person who's been a major party nominee for vice president or president who seems to not understand that there are people outside of his little internet bubble that find all of those ideas to be not just weird, but abhorrent and offensive.
Were you surprised that he was selected as Donald Trump's running mate based on what you know of him as his colleague in the Senate?
Yeah, I mean, he's really new to politics, and politics is hard, right? He's a very bright guy. He's written a book and all the rest of it, and he's got the Ivy League education. So in terms of the resume, it looks just fine. The problem is politics is hard. Running for the state house is hard. Running for mayor is hard. And he's literally never done this. And it's like taking a relatively talented rookie and putting him on an NBA court. They're not going to do well.
What are you hoping to hear from Tim Walz tonight?
Well, this man is aggressively normal, and I think that's his strongest selling point. He is a relatable human being, but it's not just that. Like at some point, people were wondering whether this is like, it's a normal guy shtick. He actually is a normal human being. He is a football coach. He is a teacher. He is a father. He is a veteran. But he's also got this incredible record of democratic governance, right? He passed all of these incredibly important and popular policies once the Democrats won the trifecta, the House, the Senate, and the governorship in Minnesota. So it provides a model to tell the people across the country, what will we do with power? We're going to enshrine Roe. We're going to move forward with climate action. We're going to take care of children and families. And I think it's a little less scary when we describe it in those terms. None of these propositions are radical. All of them poll very well, and all of them are going to motivate not just our base voters, but a lot of swing voters who want people to be taken care of by their government.
I've never heard aggressively normal used as a compliment, but I definitely get what you're going for in this case. Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Well, coming up, former President Donald Trump held his first outdoor rally today since last month's assassination attempt. Earlier this afternoon, he and J.D. Vance rallied supporters in Asheboro, North Carolina. The former president stood behind bulletproof glass. Trump narrowly lost the state to President Biden in 2020. And that is where we're going to find our Scott McFarland this evening. Scott, tell us a little bit about the scene there in Asheboro. What was it like being there?
There were some symmetries to the event July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, where the shots were fired. The flag was actually erected in the same pattern, the same way, with the same makeshift diagonal beams holding it up above a stage that looked the same in front of a crowd wearing those same red hats in the same type of political community. Asheboro is about 90 minutes from Charlotte. It has that same political complexion as Butler, Pennsylvania. But the security regimen was visible at times. You could see that bulletproof glass bowl that surrounded the stage when J.D. Vance spoke first and when Donald Trump spoke. There was a moment he stepped away from that bulletproof glass area to check on one of the rally-goers experiencing a medical emergency. But we also noticed inside the place, there seemed to be tighter restrictions on the movement of the crowd once they got to their seats. So there's so many pieces of security, Nancy, you can't see with the naked eye. Today, it was visible for those who were close to the former president.
Scott, you were at the Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania a month ago, so it must have been kind of surreal to be there today. What was that like for you? And did you get any sense that it had any effect on former President Trump to be back in a similar situation at an outdoor rally?
Yeah, the first outdoor rally with supporters since July 13th. There were some things that had the echo of July 13th. I mean, literally, this rally was right near a Sheetz gas station, just like the Butler, Pennsylvania one was. There were these vendors with makeshift stands selling Trump hats and Trump shirts. We saw that all over Butler, Pennsylvania. But it was also quite clear, Nancy, this was a smaller venue with the security apparatus, the barriers, the higher, tighter barriers, the estimates on the crowd, maybe 2,000 to 3,000. That's significantly smaller than Butler. The campaign pledged this was going to be an event about military and defense issues in this state that's home to Camp Liberty and Camp Lejeune. And the former president did at times talk about military and defense issues before he meandered off to other things. Let's listen to some of what he had to say about U.S. military security.
4 years ago, our country was strong and respected like never before. Our allies admired us. Our enemies feared us because everyone knew that as an American president, I was all about putting America first. That's true. Under my leadership, we rebuilt the United States military, created Space Force, and we made our allies pay their fair share.
But to be clear, Nancy, he deviated off that message. He meandered at times, topic to topic, going off that teleprompter. He had some very cutting criticisms of the Obamas, who he said took shots at him last night from the convention stage. He made jokes about President Biden. This was at times, unfocused, nearly hour-long set of remarks from Donald Trump.
Right. He said that the Obamas were very unkind to him in their speeches here at the convention last night. He also said earlier this week, Scott, that it's fair for him to make personal attacks against Vice President Harris because those attacks are coming his way from here in Chicago. What did he have to say about her today?
Yeah, he first of all invoked the former president's middle name, which he often does, and he said that former President Obama was nasty and that Michelle Obama was too, with their words last night. And he has this thing, and he exercised it again today, where he asks the crowd if he should go off the teleprompter and share his real thoughts. And there's a kind of a call and response there. And they were supportive of him inching towards or delving right into personal attacks. And it colored so much of these remarks today. He just floated topic to topic. He was not disciplined on message, not disciplined on the teleprompter, and that has caused heartburn, to put it charitably, among Republican surrogates with whom I'm speaking.
Yeah, heartburn among his aides as well. In fact, he said today that they've been pressuring him to stay on message, but that they're all fired, which I assume was a joke. Scott McFarlane, thank you so much for that wrap-up. We really appreciate it. Well, the Obamas stepped back into the spotlight, taking aim at former President Trump. But how will they keep showing support for the Harris-Walz ticket once this convention is over? A former Obama spokesperson will weigh in. You're streaming America Decides from the Democratic National Convention. We'll be right back.
Donald Trump thinks that we should trust him on the economy because he claims to be very rich. But take it from an actual billionaire. Trump is rich in only one thing: stupidity.
That the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs.
There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes.
That was the former president and the former first lady going after former President Trump last night here in Chicago with some memorable lines. Tommy Vietor joins us now to discuss. He is formerly the spokesman for the Obama administration and for the National Security Council. He's also the co-founder of Vote Save America and Crooked Media, for which he serves as the co-host of Pod Save America. Wow, you have a lot of titles.
I was going to say, sorry for sending you all those titles. Thank you for having me on.
It's great to have you.
It's great to be
You're
here.
one of the pod guys.
Thank you. Yeah,
basically,
sure.
right?
Take that.
So last night you posted that the Obamas tore the roof
They did.
off of this arena. But, you know, that's to be expected of them. Mm-hmm. They deliver good speeches. What do you think they're going to deliver over the next 2.5 months when it comes to actually hitting the trail for Kamala Harris?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Michelle Obama has been very honest about not liking politics, not liking it at all.
Right.
So I think it was a big deal that she was here last night and gave that speech. I think it's a reflection of the fact that she is actually a very close personal friends with Kamala Harris. They live in D.C., they hang out, they talk, you know, like very few people can commiserate and understand the lives that the two of them have been leading the last decade or two. So I imagine they'll be on the trail. Barack Obama will be out on the trail. He, I think, is one of the best messengers in the party because he excites rooms like this, but he also does something that Democrats sometimes forget to do, which is try to persuade the other side, to hear them, to, you know, take on their argument and assume good faith when people disagree with you. And so that's what I would expect.
Right. He said you wouldn't, you know, you wouldn't hate your parent or your grandparent if they didn't agree with you on everything. You would talk to them about it. That's a good point. You know, you've been watching every minute of this convention and podcasting about it. You said something the other day online, and it you know, it set off kind of a scavenger hunt to figure out what exactly you were talking about. I'll read it to you. You said, "Message to all future DNC speakers. This is not about you. It's Kamala Harris's convention. The goal is to deliver a message to help her win, not maximize your own time on stage or create a social media moment." Who in particular were you talking about there, Tommy?
The royal we. I mean, I think one, the lesson is never tweet. Two, I mean, I think, look, we live in this world where everyone's just trying to have a moment and go viral and make a splash. And I get that. But this is Kamala Harris's convention. And when your speech goes long, and then the next speech goes long, and the next speech goes long, and Joe Biden gets driven out of primetime in his own night, that's terrible. That stinks. And so I think people need to remember that. They need to listen to the really talented speechwriters who are working in the bowels of this building, actually the Chicago Blackhawks locker room, editing these things for them and not beefing them up after they get their final draft.
Speaking of Joe Biden, you and your fellow hosts at Pod Save America were among the first who ripped off the Band-Aid the morning after his disastrous debate with former President Trump. And you just came right out and said he should think very seriously about leaving the race. And that really caused shockwaves and caused a lot of people to think, oh, well, former President Obama must feel that way as well because all of you worked for him. The thinking was you wouldn't say that if you thought that it was going to anger former President Obama. Can you walk us through your thought process before you did that podcast about whether it was a good idea or not to go there?
To be honest about what we saw.
Yeah.
I mean, I think look, President Obama is like, I owe everything in my career to him. He's the best boss I've ever had. I don't know that he knows what I do for a living necessarily. He's been on the show, but I don't think he's ever listened to the show. So we're not like checking in with him and making sure arguments are okay. We watched that.
Don't sell yourself short. It's a pretty popular podcast.
It's a popular podcast, but he's got better things to do.
I'm sure he's dipped in at some point.
Who knows? So we watched that debate. We're sitting in a hotel room in Boston. We're watching together, and look, it was a train wreck. It was the worst presidential debate I've ever seen, and I think it was clear that my job now is to be honest about what I saw. I don't think it does Democrats any favor to say, let's rally together, we can get through this. Let's tell the American people that they didn't see what their eyes are telling them they saw. And so, I don't know, we figured, say what you think and let the chips fall.
But there must have been a few scary weeks for you guys there after, there were a lot of Democrats who came after you, who said that you were being disloyal. And there were a lot of Democrats who in private said that they agreed with you but weren't willing to go public. Yeah,
I mean, I think my take on this is I didn't start my own company and my own show to not say what I think, right? So we were just going to be honest. And I think, I don't know, if I woke up the next day and I said, actually that debate was fine, I think our audience would know we were lying and you would have no credibility and they wouldn't listen to us going forward. So I think the Republican Party has become a cult of personality. They do what dear leader Trump tells them to do. And they'll change positions on a dime. Democrats, we are a big motley coalition of different people. We're diverse, age, race, gender, socioeconomic status, and we have debates about things. And I think that's healthy. And yeah, it hurt. I did not like feeling like I upset friends of mine who are working on the campaign, who are working a lot harder than I am, a pampered podcast guy sitting in Los Angeles. Like, they're grinding it out in Wilmington doing the real work. But I think at the end of the day, like, we all have good intentions and got to a better place.
Well, as a result of what you said, many other Democrats said as well, we're now at the Harris convention rather than the Biden convention. It's a big, major shift in the past couple of months.
Pretty wild.
Tommy Vietor, thanks so much for being with me.
Thank
I really
you for
appreciate
having me.
it.
This is very fun.
Thanks so much. Well, Republicans take center stage at the Democratic National Convention. Why some of them on the right are finding a home with Harris and talking about it. Our political panel will weigh in next. You're streaming America Decides from the DNC. We'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here tonight to officially nominate Kamala Harris for president. Fire, get loud, another round of shots. DNC, turn out for what? Turn out for what? Hey, turn out for what?
Welcome back to America Decides. It's not only Democrats advocating for Kamala Harris here in Chicago. Several Republicans are arguing that their party needs to move on from Donald Trump.
He has no empathy, no morals, and no fidelity to the truth.
The grand old party has been kidnapped by extremists and devolved into a cult. The cult of Donald Trump.
Let's bring in our political panel now to discuss. Finn Gomez, Toulouse Olorunipa. Finn is CBS News political director, and Toulouse is the White House bureau chief for the Washington Post. Great to see both of you. Finn,
yes.
Good to have you back here on the podium. We just played some of that sound from Republicans at the DNC last night. We still have a couple more Republicans we're going to hear from over the next couple of days, like Adam Kinzinger. Does an appearance by a never-Trumper like Kinzinger, like Stephanie Grisham, does that move the needle for swing voters?
I think it does in certain states, like Georgia. We just heard Donald Trump a couple weeks ago go after the very popular Republican governor there, Brian Kemp. I think you also have like the Healy Republican in other parts of the state, the sort of more moderate foreign policy focused Republican, and you have like the sort of old school McCain Republican, right, in Arizona, where I think they like Donald Trump's policies, but they do not like Donald Trump personally. I think Stephanie Grisham and sort of the argument that she made about Donald Trump, I think it can move the needle in those places.
Right. It reminds people that it's okay to split from your party from time to time. Toulouse, one of the biggest focuses tonight is going to be immigration, which is interesting because that's not typically seen as an issue that is a strength for Democrats. Are they trying to preempt Republican attacks on Harris over her role when it comes to immigration?
They are definitely trying to at least neutralize the issue in the minds of voters. Republicans have had a big advantage when it comes to immigration, especially over the past several years under the Biden administration. But in the last few months, Democrats have tried to flip the script by saying that it was Donald Trump that sunk a bill that was bipartisan that would have helped solve the problem at the border. And because he wanted to keep it as a political issue, he told other Republicans not to vote for that bill. And we've heard Kamala Harris say in front of big crowds at big rallies that she would sign that bill as president. And so it is an effort to take a tougher stance. It is an effort for Democrats to try to get ahead of this issue. This is an issue that has become one of the top issues, according to polls, that voters are thinking about. And so it would be political malpractice for Democrats to cede that issue to Republicans. That's part of the reason they want to be talking about it in the way that they want to focus on it during their convention, in a way that will allow them to change the narrative and allow people to see it through their lens as opposed to the lens that Donald Trump has been proposing.
I want to ask both of you about a couple of new developments today. We learned that independent candidate RFK Jr. has secured a spot on the Arizona ballot. That's key. Arizona is a battleground state. We also learned that he's going to speak in Arizona on Friday about the future of his campaign. And Finn, his running mate, has been saying this week that they are considering dropping out of the race and throwing their support behind Donald Trump. How would that affect the race?
I think it's some of the polling that we have seen that actually would help or could help Donald Trump, because if you look at the polling prior to this news, and CBS News has confirmed that he is seriously considering dropping out of the race, but it will pull more from Donald Trump. His support does help. It pulls more from Donald Trump. Yeah. So conversely, if he did drop out of the race, maybe that support goes to Trump. However, However, I do think that some of that support are also people who were looking for like another option. It wasn't about RFK Jr. It was initially they didn't want to vote for Trump. They didn't want to vote for Joe Biden. And now, you know, I don't know if that's as strong as they think it might be. However, again, in places like Arizona, it's like there could be some razor thin margins. And our own polling shows that it's essentially, you know, within the margin of error. So, you know, every little bit counts, you know?
It could also, Tolu, clarify things for some moderate independent voters who hear the Kennedy name and assume that he must side with the Democrats.
That's true. We have already started to see some movement in the polling where some of the vote that was going towards RFK Jr. has shifted back towards Kamala Harris since Joe Biden ran out of the race. But it would not be a surprise if a number of Democrats saw an endorsement from RFK Jr. for Donald Trump, or a sign that he has moved more to the right, as an indication that they need to take their vote and take it away from him and put it in the Democratic column. And so there have been a lot of questions about what the third-party vote share will be in this election. I do think that these signs from the RFK camp that they are considering dropping out, that they're considering putting their support behind Trump, would only allow some of the voters that saw his name, saw his last name, and thought that he would be more of a Democratic kind of independent person. Those voters may be more willing to vote for Kamala Harris if they don't find a name that they can put their vote behind in a Kennedy. And I would be very surprised if some of those voters listened to his endorsement and decided to go to Donald Trump.
Some Latino voters that I spoke to in Arizona, when I spoke to them, they told me they liked Kennedy simply because of his father's legacy, not fully understanding or knowing what he represented, just knowing that they liked his name. So I think, to Tolu's point, I think that's something we also have to watch.
That is so interesting. Before you go, Finn, I want to ask you about some eye-popping new fundraising numbers from the month of July. The Harris campaign says it raised just over $200 million in July. The Trump campaign raised only about a quarter of that, $47.5 million. And keep in mind, this was the month of the Republican convention.
Right.
This was the month right after former President Biden had that disastrous debate. Are you surprised that it wasn't more of a blockbuster month for Republicans?
Yeah, if you look at these numbers, Nancy, the Harris campaign raised essentially 4 times as much as Trump in July. That is astronomical, and it is surprising. But it shows, if you look at indicators of momentum, I think that is one key indicator of where the momentum lies right now. But as you know, we're in unprecedented, uncharted waters here, historic. So, I mean, who knows how that changes in the next few weeks. But yes, right now, I think it's an indicator of where the momentum lies.
Yeah, it also reflects that big bump from late in the month when Kamala Harris was named as the nominee.
Right.
Tolu Olorunipa, Finn Gomez, happy birthday, Finn.
Thanks, Nancy.
Great.
Appreciate
I'm
it.
sure you'd rather be nowhere else except for here on your birthday. Thanks so much
Thanks, Nancy.
for spending it with us.
Absolutely.
All right. Coming up, you're going to recognize the voices of Donald Trump and Tim Walz right away. But what if those voices are actually coming from comedian Matt Friend? You're going to want to stick around to hear some of his truly unbelievable impressions. He joins me next here in Chicago. You're streaming America Decides.
She will have an outstanding partner in Governor Tim Walz. You can tell those flannel shirts he wears don't come from some political consultant. They come from his closet, and they have been through some stuff.
It is really a tremendous opportunity to be at the most failed dinner anybody's ever seen. Great to see you losers. A lot of people say that. Hello, everybody. Why is it so quiet? What's happening? It's quieter than Sleepy Joe.
That was comedian Matt Friend doing one of his many impressions of politicians, but the Trump one is really a classic. That was at this year's White House Correspondents' Dinner. The man of many voices is now, I hear, trying his hand at a certain Midwestern governor who is going to take the stage here tonight. Matt Friend, or should I say Governor Walz?
Well, yeah, no, we're going to get right into the Walz. I just want to have some Gatorade poured on me and win this damn thing, all right? He's got that coach energy. He's fired up. He's yelling. It needs work.
You're going full coach.
I'm going full Ted Lasso, immersing myself in the character. It's a lot of energy required.
It's like a Friday Night Lights meets
It's a Friday
Ted
Night
Lasso.
Light. Exactly right. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to have
Great
you.
to see you.
So good to have former President Obama as well, who really lit up this place last night.
I like how you're teeing me up. And as I said yesterday, we are running against a billionaire who all he does is complain and whine. And we here on this network know that this election is about two different choices. And we have to realize that Kamala Harris can get the job done, and she realizes that I am my sister's keeper. I am my brother's keeper. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You know, Mr. President, some people are saying, some people are saying that
some people are saying
Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro sounds a little bit like you and has some of your mannerisms.
Well, yeah, I'm working on the Shapiro. He just got the same Obama movements. He's kind of too cool for school. My faith serves me to lead. Yes, we can. Hava Nagila, baby. He's the Jewish Obama, and I'm here for it. And
okay,
I can say that.
Keep working on
that.
that.
I'm going to work on that one. Yeah, I will. Yeah, anyway.
You know, I really wonder.
Simon Cowell. Yeah. This is an America's Got Talent audition. Keep working.
Keep going. Keep going. Yeah. You have a bright future, kid.
Thank you.
Wondering what former President Trump would have to say about what he heard on the stage here in Chicago last night.
Well, it's just a nasty convention all around. There's a lot of sad people. They're very confused. They're totally deranged. Barack Hussein Obama is talking about me. He doesn't know a thing what he's saying. You have Kamala. No one knows what she is or who she is. It's really I said this at the Association of Black Journalists. No one knows what's happening. It's a sad convention. It's really sad. They're trying to take the country away, the democracy away, but you can elect me and we can all dance with Kid Rock, and that's going to be a beautiful thing. I think the entertainment's a little better here tonight. We have James Taylor and John Legend versus Kid Rock. Yeah. Anyways.
What about former President Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance? Are you working on that one? That's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I would lean more into the J.D. Vance, but as you know, the Democrats think anything is racist. I mean, I chugged a Mountain Dew on my couch before I made love to it yesterday, and I should probably get off the air. By the way, they didn't know I was going to say that, but I really appreciate the network for having me on. And JD is he needs to work out his basic communication skills, I would say. Yeah.
Matt, when you're not making fun of various politicians, what else are you doing here at the convention?
Yeah, no, I'm just having a great time. The energy is amazing. Thank you for having me on. I'm grateful to be here. It's amazing. I'm from Chicago, so thrilling to be back home, and it's a very unique atmosphere. I mean, you kind of have to be here to see it.
Yep.
But when you talk about the energy, and I think it's amazing how the campaign has shifted in these last 3 weeks. It feels like a totally different world now.
Yeah.
But I'm just happy to be meeting people and seeing what's going on. It's such a random collection of people walking around here.
It's a slice of Americana, no question.
It's like Lollapalooza for politics.
We are wrapping up this hour, but if you could say goodbye as Bernie Sanders, I would really appreciate that.
Well, listen, all I will say... all I will say is this. To our many viewers watching today, thank you very much. This is a show and a network not just for the top 10th of 1%, but for all of America. And I appreciate you watching. Have a great convention, a great afternoon, and thank you very much.
Senator Sanders, so great to see you today. Really appreciate it. Matt Friend. Thanks for making us laugh.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate it.
Thanks for giving me the chance.
And that does it for now. As we've been reporting, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz will officially accept the Democratic vice presidential nomination tonight, the real Tim Walz. During his keynote address, CBS News special coverage of the Democratic National Convention will continue all evening long. I'll be back at 7 p.m. Eastern with more of this. The Daily Report with John Dickerson is next.